The breaking point, the war clock, showed 30 minutes. 30 minutes until two of the galaxy's oldest civilizations would destroy each other, and possibly take half the known universe with them. Ambassador Marcus Rivera stood in the observation gallery of Harmony 7, the massive space station that served as the Galactic Senate's neutral ground. He pressed his hand against the transparent alloy window and stared at the fleets gathering in the distance. On the left, the Velker Empire's warships gleamed like shards of obsidian, each vessel bristling with weapons that could crack planets. On the right, the Ashanti Coalition's organic ships pulsed with bioluminescent energy, living creatures bred specifically for war. Marcus had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Senate for 15 years. 15 years of learning alien customs, studying galactic law, and trying to prove that humanity deserved a seat among civilizations millions of years older. Now, watching the countdown tick away, he wondered if any of it mattered. The galaxy was about to burn, and he was just one human in a station full of beings, far more powerful and ancient than himself. The Senate chamber behind him was chaos. Representatives from 63 different species argued, shouted, and transmitted their distress in languages that ranged from chemical signatures to electromagnetic pulses. The translation matrix struggled to keep up, creating a cacophony that made Marcus's head pound out. At the center of the chamber stood the source of all this conflict, a holographic projection of the Nexus Rift. It looked like a tear in reality itself, a swirling vortex of colors that shouldn't exist. Scientists from every advanced civilization had studied it for decades. They all agreed on one thing: the Nexus Rift contained enough energy to power entire galaxies for millennia. It was also completely unpredictable, defying every law of physics anyone understood. The Velker wanted it. The Ashanti wanted it. And neither side would back down. Marcus turned from the window and walked back into the chamber. He moved through the crowd carefully, aware that a careless bump could trigger a diplomatic incident. The Velker representatives stood in their designated area, their crystalline bodies reflecting the chamber's lights in sharp, aggressive patterns. They were silicon-based life forms, built like living diamonds, nearly indestructible and incredibly strong. Their entire culture was based on strength, territory, and the right of the powerful to claim what they could hold. General Kazar, the Velker Supreme Commander, dominated the space around him. He stood 3 meters tall, his body composed of interlocking crystal plates that shifted with his movements. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like grinding stone. The translator converted his words into something Marcus could understand. "The Nexus Rift lies within Velker territory," Kazar declared. "We discovered it. We claimed it. We have the strength to hold it. This is our right by every law of nature." Across the chamber, the Ashanti representatives occupied a space filled with soft, pulsing light. They were telepathic beings, their bodies composed of semi-transparent tissue that glowed with neural activity. They existed as a collective consciousness, thousands of individuals thinking as one. When they spoke, it was through a chosen voice, but the words came from their entire civilization. The Ashanti voice was a being named Serentel. She floated in a suspension field, her luminous form shifting colors to reflect the emotional state of billions of connected minds. When she responded to Kazar, her words carried the weight of an entire species. "The Nexus Rift is not property to be claimed," Serentel said, her voice like music played on crystal chimes. "It is a consciousness. We have communicated with it. We understand it. Only we can safely interact with it. The Velker would destroy it through ignorance and force." Kazar's crystal body flared with angry red light. "You claim to understand it? You claim special rights because of your telepathy? That is arrogance. The rift exists in physical space. Physical beings have the right to claim physical territory. The rift exists beyond physical space," Serentel countered. It touches dimensions your kind cannot perceive. Your soldiers cannot guard what they cannot understand. Marcus watched this exchange and felt a familiar frustration building. This was the 5th emergency session in 3 days. Every session followed the same pattern. Both sides presented their arguments. Both sides refused to compromise. The other species tried to mediate, but their suggestions were dismissed. And with each passing hour, more warships arrived, and the probability of violence increased. The mediator prime, an ancient being that looked like a floating mass of roots and vines, tried once more to find common ground. Its voice was slow and patient, shaped by thousands of years of resolving conflicts. Perhaps the Nexus Rift could be studied jointly, the mediator suggested. Both civilizations could contribute scientists. Both could benefit from the knowledge gained. Kazara's response was immediate. Joint control is weakness. It invites betrayal. The Velker do not share what is ours by right. Serentel's light pulsed with colors that indicated frustration. Joint study is impossible. The Velker lack the mental sophistication to perceive what the rift truly is. They would contaminate the research with their crude materialist assumptions. Marcus closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. This was the problem. Both species were absolutely convinced of their position. More than that, they were incapable of seeing any other perspective. The Velker had evolved on a high-gravity world where survival meant being stronger than everything else. Their entire psychology was built on dominance and territorial control. They literally could not conceive of not claiming something they had the power to take. The Ashanti had evolved as a telepathic collective. Their survival had depended on perfect coordination and shared consciousness. They could not imagine any legitimate claim to something that didn't involve understanding it telepathically. To them, the Velker's position was like claiming ownership of a poem. Because you were standing near the poet, both species were prisoners of their own evolution. Both were following programming written into their genes millions of years ago. And both were about to die because of it. The war clock showed 22 minutes. Marcus opened his eyes and looked around the chamber. He saw the other representatives, all desperately trying to find a solution. The Quarren delegate, a being made of living metal, proposed dividing the rift's energy output proportionally. Rejected. The Vexians, who existed as a gaseous collective, suggested moving the rift to neutral space. Physically impossible. The Mordani representative, a creature with 12 tentacles and bioluminescent skin, offered his species as neutral observers. Both sides refused to accept any observers. Every species was trying their best. Every species was using their particular talents and perspectives to find a solution. But every suggestion failed because the Velker and Ashanti were locked in patterns they could not break. Marcus thought about his training. He had studied xenopsychology for years, learning how different species thought and communicated. He understood the Velker need for strength-based hierarchy. He understood the Ashanti reliance on telepathic consensus. He understood that both species were acting exactly as their biology dictated, but understanding didn't help. Knowledge didn't stop wars. The war clock showed 19 minutes. Marcus made a decision. It was possibly the stupidest decision of his life, but every conventional option had failed. If following the rules led to galactic war, then maybe it was time to break the rules. He walked to the center of the chamber. This alone was unusual. Junior representatives like Marcus were supposed to stay in their designated areas and speak only when recognized by the mediator prime. Walking to the center without permission was a serious breach of protocol. Every eye sensor and perception organ in the chamber turned toward him. The chamber fell silent. The mediator prime's ancient voice carried a note of surprise. Ambassador Rivera, you have not been recognized to speak. Marcus took a deep breath. I'm invoking the last voice protocol. The silence in the chamber became absolute. Even the background hum of the station system seemed to fade. The last voice protocol was an ancient provision in the Galactic Charter, added thousands of years ago and nearly forgotten. It stated that if conventional diplomacy had completely failed, and if war was imminent, any member species could invoke the protocol. The invoking species would have one chance to present an alternative solution. All parties were required to listen without interruption. The protocol existed because there had been one case. Millennia ago, where a young civilization had proposed a solution that older species had never considered. That solution had prevented a war. The protocol had been added to honor that moment, but in 10,000 years, it had never been invoked again, not until now. The Mediator Prime's roots rustled with what might have been concern. Ambassador Rivera, the last voice protocol is your right to invoke. However, you must understand the consequences. If your proposal is rejected, Earth forfeits its ability to participate in any future mediation related to this conflict. Your species will be effectively silenced on this matter. Marcus nodded. I understand. Kazur's crystalline body emitted a sound like grinding boulders. The human wishes to waste our final minutes with pointless words? Very well. Speak quickly, soft flesh. Tell us your solution, so we can reject it and proceed to honorable combat. Sarentel's light pulsed with colors that suggested curiosity, mixed with skepticism. The humans are barely children in galactic terms. They joined the Senate only 15 years ago. What could they possibly offer that civilizations millions of years old have not already considered? Marcus looked at both of them. He looked at all the assembled species. He saw beings of incredible power, vast intelligence, and ancient wisdom. He saw civilizations that had mastered physics, conquered death, and spread across thousands of star systems. And he saw that they were all about to die because they couldn't imagine doing something different. You're right, Marcus said. Humanity is young. We've been part of the galactic community for barely a moment. We don't have your strength, your telepathy, your technology, or your wisdom. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we have something you don't. We have the ability to be completely committed to something one moment and then change our minds the next moment. We can believe two opposite things at the same time. We can follow our instincts and then ignore them. We can make promises and break them. We can be certain and uncertain simultaneously. Kazur made a sound of disgust. You describe weakness and inconsistency. Why would we listen to advice from a species that cannot even commit to its own decisions? Sarentel's colors shifted to patterns Marcus's translator identified as confusion. Your description matches our observations of human behavior. Your species seems to lack the coherent decision-making structures that characterize advanced civilizations. This is considered a developmental flaw. Marcus smiled. You call it a flaw. We call it survival. The war clock showed 15 minutes. Marcus continued. Let me tell you a story. 63 years ago, there were two major powers on Earth, the United States and the Soviet Union. They hated each other. They had opposing ideologies. They had nuclear weapons pointed at each other, weapons that could destroy our entire planet. Several representatives made sounds of interest. Nuclear weapons were primitive by galactic standards, but the concept of mutually assured destruction was universal. In 1962, there was a crisis, Marcus said. Soviet nuclear missiles were placed on an island called Cuba, very close to American territory. The Americans demanded they be removed. The Soviets refused. Both sides mobilized their militaries. Both sides prepared to launch nuclear weapons. The world stood on the edge of total annihilation. Marcus looked at Kazur. The American military calculated they could win a nuclear war. They had slightly more weapons and slightly better delivery systems. The math said they should attack first. He turned to Serentel. The Soviet leadership had committed to defending Cuba. They had made this commitment publicly. To back down would shatter their credibility and possibly lead to the collapse of their government. Their political consensus demanded they stand firm. Both alien representatives were listening now. This situation sounded familiar to them. So what happened? Marcus asked. By all logic, by all calculation, by all political necessity, war should have occurred. But it didn't. You know why? The chamber was silent. Because at the last moment, both sides decided that being alive was more important than being right. The Soviet leader, Khrushchev, withdrew the missiles. The American leader, Kennedy, promised not to invade Cuba. Both leaders faced criticism from their own people. Both were accused of weakness. But both chose survival over pride. Kazer's crystals ground together. So they both surrendered? They both showed weakness? This is not a solution. This is mutual humiliation. No, Marcus said firmly. They both chose wisdom over instinct. They both recognized that following their programming would lead to extinction. So they changed their programming. Serentel's light pulsed rapidly. But how? If their political structures demanded they stand firm, if their calculations showed advantage in striking first, how could they simply decide otherwise? That violates the logic of their own decision-making systems. Marcus spread his hands. That's what makes us human. We can violate our own logic. We can override our programming. We can look at a situation and say, everything I know tells me to do this. But I'm going to do something else instead. He walked closer to the holographic projection of the Nexus Rift, its swirling colors reflecting off his face. You're both trapped, Marcus said. The Velker are trapped by your need to claim and dominate. The Ashanti are trapped by your need to understand and control through telepathy. You're both following scripts written by your evolution. You can't see beyond them. Kazer took a threatening step forward. You dare suggest the Velker are limited? We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have never been defeated. And yet, Marcus said calmly, right now, you're about to lose everything because you can't imagine not conquering something. Asterisk Serentel's colors shifted to something Marcus's translator couldn't quite interpret. The Ashanti collective represents the pinnacle of conscious coordination. We have achieved harmony beyond what physical beings can comprehend. And yet, Marcus repeated, right now, your perfect harmony is leading you into a war that will destroy billions of your people. The war clock showed 12 minutes. Marcus took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment where everything would either work or fail completely. I have a proposal, he said. But first, I need both of you to understand something about humans. We don't just talk about changing. We actually do it. And I'm going to prove it right now. He walked to the chamber's edge where the protective barrier separated the interior from the vacuum of space beyond. Every species wore some form of environmental protection, atmospheric fields or containment suits that let them survive in the station's common areas. Marcus reached up and deactivated his atmospheric field. Immediately, alarms began sounding. The Mediator Prime's voice rose in alarm. Ambassador Rivera, what are you doing? The atmosphere in this chamber is toxic to humans. Reactivate your protection immediately. Marcus ignored the warning. He could already feel the effects. The air in the chamber was a compromised mixture that no species found ideal, but humans found particularly difficult. Without his atmospheric field, he was breathing a mix of gases that would damage his lungs within minutes. I'm betting my life, Marcus said, his voice already becoming strained, that you're both capable of more than your programming. I'm betting that you can choose differently. I'm betting that intelligence means something more than just following instinct. His vision started to blur. The toxic atmosphere was affecting him faster than he'd expected. If you choose war, Marcus continued, struggling to keep his voice steady, then I'll die here in a few minutes from atmospheric poisoning. If you choose to listen to my proposal, I'll survive long enough to present it. Kazer's crystals shifted position. This is madness. You sacrifice yourself for nothing. We are not responsible for your foolish choice. Sarentel's light pulsed with colors that Marcus's fading vision couldn't quite make out. The human is demonstrating commitment through self-destruction. This behavior pattern indicates severe psychological instability. Marcus laughed, though it hurt his burning lungs. No, I'm demonstrating something neither of you understand. I'm showing you what it means to gamble, to risk everything on the possibility that things can be different, to bet on change instead of certainty. He dropped to one knee, his body struggling with the toxic environment. The Velker claim the rift because you're strong enough to take it. The Ashanti claim it because you're sophisticated enough to understand it. But what if those are both the wrong reasons? What if the Nexus Rift shouldn't be claimed at all? The war clock showed 10 minutes. Asterisk. Marcus looked up at both representatives through eyes that were starting to water from the caustic atmosphere. What if, he said, his voice barely a whisper now, what if the Nexus Rift is meant to remain a mystery? What if some things in the universe aren't meant to be owned or controlled? What if the right answer is to protect it, study it carefully, and let it remain unknown? His vision was going dark at the edges. He had maybe 2 minutes before permanent damage set in. Maybe 3 before death. Choose, Marcus whispered. Choose war and I die, proving that different species can't coexist. Choose to listen, and I live long enough to tell you how this could work. The chamber was absolutely silent except for the blaring alarms and the countdown of the war clock. 9 minutes and 47 seconds. 9 minutes and 46 seconds. Marcus's consciousness started to fade. He had made his gamble. Now he could only wait to see if humans really were as unpredictable as he claimed, or if he had just thrown his life away for nothing. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was a flash of crystalline movement and a pulse of brilliant light moving toward him at incredible speed. Asterisk. The impossible choice. Marcus woke to the sensation of pure oxygen flooding his lungs. His eyes snapped open, and he found himself surrounded by a shimmering field of crystalline light on one side and pulsing telepathic energy on the other. Kazdir had moved with impossible speed, creating a protective barrier with his own body, while Sarentel had generated an atmosphere bubble using the Asheni's biotechnological abilities. The two ancient enemies were working together to keep him alive. Marcus's translator picked up Kazer's voice. Though the general wasn't speaking to him, the human still breathes. His vital signs are stabilizing. Sarentel's luminous form hovered. Closer, her color shifting through patterns that indicated concern. His neural activity shows recovery. The damage was not permanent. He will survive. Marcus tried to sit up, but gentle pressure from both sides kept him down. Kazer's crystalline appendage rested on his shoulder, surprisingly warm. Sarentel's telepathic field wrapped around his mind, soothing and protective. Stay still, human, Kazer rumbled. You were moments from death. Even now, your biology is fragile. Why? Sarentel asked, and Marcus realized the question was directed at him. Why would you sacrifice yourself for civilizations not your own? Your species has no stake in this conflict. Earth is far from the Nexus Rift. Whether we go to war or not, humanity would be largely unaffected. Marcus managed a weak smile. That's where you're wrong. If you two destroy each other, the galaxy changes forever. Trade routes collapse. Alliances shatter. Every species gets pulled into choosing sides or defending borders. And beyond all that political calculation, there's something simpler. He paused, gathering his strength to continue. I couldn't watch it happen. I couldn't. Sit in that chamber and watch billions of beings march toward death because nobody could think of a different option. That's not political calculation. That's just being human. We do stupid, reckless things when we care about something. The war clock showed 7 minutes and 18 seconds. In the background, Marcus could hear the other representatives talking urgently among themselves. Some were calling for medical teams. Others were debating the legal implications of what had just happened. But Kazar and Sarentel remained focused on Marcus, their attention absolute. Kazar's crystals rotated in a pattern Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. You spoke of a proposal before you collapsed. You suggested the Nexus Rift should not be claimed by anyone. Yes, Marcus said, his strength slowly returning. Let me tell you another story about humans. About a time when we faced something similar to your situation. Sarentel's colors pulsed with interest. Another crisis where your species defied logic? Marcus nodded. In the 20th century, Earth's nations began exploring Antarctica, our southern polar continent. It was filled with resources, minerals, potential territorial claims. Every major power wanted to claim parts of it. By all historical patterns, it should have been divided up, militarized, and turned into another source of conflict. He slowly sat up, this time without resistance from his protectors. The atmospheric bubble around him adjusted, maintaining breathable air. But in 1959, 12 nations signed something called the Antarctic Treaty. They agreed that Antarctica would belong to no one. It would be preserved for scientific research. Military activities were banned. Territorial claims were frozen. Any nation could conduct research there, but no nation could own it. Kazar's grinding voice carried skepticism. And this agreement held? Nations with the power to claim territory simply chose not to? This contradicts basic principles of resource acquisition. It held, Marcus confirmed. And it still holds today, over 100 years later. 54 nations have signed it now. Antarctica remains the only continent on Earth that belongs to all humanity and to none of us at the same time. Sarentel's telepathic presence touched Marcus's mind gently, reading the truth of his words. The collective consciousness of your species agreed to leave a resource unclaimed. This suggests a capacity for long-term thinking we did not attribute to humans. We're full of surprises, Marcus said with a slight smile. And that's exactly what I'm proposing for the Nexus Rift. Make it a protected mystery. A place where both your civilizations and any other species can conduct careful research. But no one owns it. No one militarizes it. No one exploits it. The war clock showed 5 minutes and 42 seconds. Kazar's entire crystalline structure seemed to ripple with internal conflict. You ask the Velker to abandon a claim we have the strength to enforce. This violates everything we are. Our entire civilization is built on the principle that strength determines ownership. If we cannot claim what we have the power to hold, what are we? Marcus looked directly at the towering crystal warrior. You're a civilization wise enough to know that some things are more valuable, unexploited, than exploited. You're a species strong enough to restrain your own strength. That's not weakness, General. That's a kind of power your people have never explored. He turned to Sarentel. And you, the Ashanti, you claim the rift because your telepathy lets you perceive it in ways others cannot. But what if your perception is incomplete? What if the rift exists in dimensions even your collective consciousness cannot fully reach? By claiming exclusive rights to it, you limit what you might discover. Sarentel's colors shifted through rapid patterns, indicating intense internal discussion among the billions of minds that comprised the Ashanti collective. You suggest our understanding is limited? The Ashanti collective represents the most sophisticated consciousness in the known galaxy. Asterisk, I'm sure it is, Marcus said carefully. But the Nexus Rift isn't from the known galaxy, is it? Your own scientists say it touches other dimensions, other realities, maybe even other universes. Can your telepathy reach into universes where the laws of consciousness are completely different? The question hung in the air. Sarentel's colors went through a pattern Marcus had never seen before, a complex cascade of hues that his translator struggled to interpret. Finally, words came. The collective is divided. Some minds argue that your point has validity. The rift may indeed extend beyond our perceptual range. Other minds maintain that our methods, given sufficient time, could eventually comprehend all aspects of the rift. And how much time would you need? Marcus asked. Decades? Centuries? Millennia? And what happens to the rift while you're trying to understand it? What if your telepathic probing changes it or damages it? What if the Velker's resource extraction disrupts something crucial? The war clock showed 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Marcus stood up fully now, the protective bubble moving with him. He walked toward the holographic projection of the Nexus Rift, and his two unlikely guardians moved with him, maintaining the protective barrier. Look at it, Marcus said, gesturing to the swirling chaos of impossible colors. It's beautiful precisely because we don't understand it. It's valuable precisely because it's unknown. The moment either of you claims it and starts exploiting it, it becomes less than what it is now. Kazdir moved closer to the projection, his crystalline eyes reflecting the rift's strange light. The Velker do not appreciate mysteries. We appreciate strength, territory, and the clarity of ownership. Then learn to appreciate something new, Marcus said. That's what evolution really is. Not just biological adaptation, but the ability to develop new values, new perspectives, new ways of being. You've been the same for millions of years. Maybe it's time to become something more. The general's crystals ground together in what Marcus had learned was the Velker equivalent of a laugh. You are audacious human. You lecture civilizations millions of years old about evolution. Someone has to, Marcus replied, because right now, your millions of years of evolution are leading you straight into extinction. Sometimes the newcomer sees things the old-timers can't see anymore. Sarentel drifted closer, her telepathic presence intensifying around Marcus's mind. He felt her trying to understand him, to read the patterns of his thoughts. But human minds were notoriously difficult for telepaths to read, chaotic and unpredictable in ways that frustrated species built on mental clarity. You are sincere, Sarentel said, surprise evident in her colors. Your proposal is not a tactical maneuver. You genuinely believe that preserving the rift as an unclaimed mystery serves everyone's interests better than ownership. Of course I'm sincere, Marcus said. I just nearly died to get you to listen. I'm not that good an actor. The war clock showed 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Around the chamber, Marcus could feel the attention of every species focused on this moment. The Mediator Prime had gone completely still, its ancient consciousness watching events unfold. The other representatives had ceased their discussions, all of them waiting to see what would happen next. Kazdir spoke, his voice carrying a weight that suggested he was speaking not just for himself, but for his entire empire. If the Velker agreed to your proposal, what would prevent the Ashanti from claiming the rift the moment we withdrew our fleets? The same thing that would prevent the Velker from claiming it if we withdrew first, Sarentel responded. We would need guarantees, enforcement, a neutral party with sufficient authority to maintain the preserve. Marcus took a deep breath. This was the crucial part, the element that could make the entire proposal work or fall apart. Earth would serve as the neutral guardian, he said. The response was immediate and explosive. Kazdir's crystals flared with aggressive red light. Sarentel's colors shifted to patterns indicating shock and disbelief. Around the chamber, representatives erupted into discussion. Impossible. Kazdir's voice boomed, Humans are the youngest species in the Senate. You have been part of galactic civilization for merely 15 years. You lack the technology, the military strength, the political authority to maintain such a preserve. Exactly, Marcus said calmly. We lack all those things. We're weak, inexperienced, and politically insignificant. That's precisely why we're perfect for this role. Sarentel's telepathic presence pressed against Marcus's mind, trying to understand his logic. You propose your weakness as a qualification. This reasoning defies rational analysis. Marcus walked back toward the center of the chamber, his protective bubble moving with him. Think about it. If the Velker guard the rift, the Ashanti will never trust that you're not secretly exploiting it. If the Ashanti guard it, the Velker will always suspect telepathic manipulation. Any other major power in the galaxy has either allied with one of you or tried to stay neutral and failed. He spread his hands. But humanity? We have no ancient grudges with either of you. We have no territorial ambitions in that region of space. We lack the military power to threaten either empire. And most importantly, we have no idea what we're doing. The war clock showed 2 minutes and 58 seconds. That last part is not reassuring, Kazar growled. Marcus smiled. It should be, because it means we have no predetermined agenda. We're not locked into ancient patterns like everyone else. When something unexpected happens at the rift, which it absolutely will, we won't try to force it into our existing models. We'll adapt. We'll improvise. We'll figure it out as we go. He looked at both representatives. You call it incompetence. We call it flexibility. You see weakness. We see potential. You want certainty. We offer possibility. Sarentel's colors shifted through a pattern that Marcus's translator identified as profound contemplation. The human makes a valid point. Our observations of human behavior show extreme adaptability. They function well in chaotic circumstances where other species would fail. They function well because they have no choice, Kazar countered. They lack the strength to impose order, so they adapt to chaos. This is not a virtue. It is a necessity born from weakness. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But right now, that weakness is exactly what you need. You need someone who won't try to control the rift. Someone who will protect it without claiming it. Someone who will coordinate research without favoring one species over another. The war clock showed 2 minutes and 19 seconds. Marcus could see both representatives processing his proposal. Kazar's crystalline structure was going through complex internal reorganizations, patterns of light flowing through his body as he consulted with other Velker commanders across light years of space. Sarentel's colors cycled rapidly as billions of Ashanti minds debated the proposition. The chamber remained silent except for the steady countdown. Marcus thought about Earth, about the home he might never see again. He thought about his family, his friends, all the humans who had no idea that their representative was gambling their species' entire political future on a crazy idea. If this worked, humanity would gain prestige and responsibility beyond anything they'd earned. If it failed, Earth would be marginalized in galactic politics for generations. But more than that, if it failed, the galaxy would burn. The war clock showed 1 minute and 47 seconds. Kazar spoke first, his voice carrying across the chamber with the weight of eons. The Velker Empire requires clarification. If we agreed to this preserve, what would prevent the Ashanti from using their telepathic abilities to influence the human guardians? Sarentel responded immediately, her voice sharp. And what would prevent the Velker from using military force to intimidate the humans into favoring your interests? Marcus held up his hands. Both excellent questions. Here's my answer. You don't prevent it. You accept that both of you will try to influence us. And you trust that we're stubborn enough to resist both of you. Both representatives turned to him with expressions that, even across the vast differences in physiology, clearly indicated they thought he was insane. "Let me tell you one more human story," Marcus said quickly. The clock showed 1 minute and 23 seconds. During the Cold War one mentioned earlier, there was a city called Berlin. It was divided between American control and Soviet control. Both superpowers tried constantly to influence, intimidate, and manipulate the people living there. It should have been impossible for anyone to maintain independence. He gestured emphatically. But the people of Berlin did maintain their independence, or at least enough of it to survive. They played both sides. They resisted both pressures. They found ways to be themselves, despite living between two giants trying to control them. And eventually, the wall that divided them came down because both sides realized that the city was more valuable free than controlled. The war clock showed 59 seconds. Marcus looked at Kazar. "You will try to use your strength to influence Earth's decisions about the rift. You'll station fleets nearby. You'll make implicit threats. You'll offer trade deals and alliances. And we'll probably accept some of their offers and reject others, and you won't be able to predict which ones because we're too unpredictable." He turned to Serentel. "You will try to use your telepathy to understand our motivations and guide our choices. You'll read our emotions, analyze our thought patterns, and try to appeal to our psychology. And sometimes it will work, and sometimes it won't. And you won't be able to calculate the success rate, because human minds are too chaotic for perfect telepathic prediction." The war clock showed 42 seconds. "So, both of you will have some influence." Marcus continued, speaking rapidly now. "Neither of you will have complete control, and both of you will have to accept that uncertainty. You'll have to trust that humanity's self-interest in maintaining the preserve will outweigh any temporary advantage either of you might offer us." 37 seconds. Kaz. Thor's crystals were glowing with intense internal light. "The Velker are consulting. We are calculating probabilities. We are assessing scenarios." 30 seconds. Serentel's entire form was pulsing with rapid, complex color patterns. "The Ashanti Collective is debating. Billions of minds are evaluating the proposal from every possible angle." 25 seconds. Marcus felt his heart pounding. There was nothing more he could say. He had presented his argument. He had demonstrated humanity's unpredictable nature by gambling his own life. He had offered a solution that required both ancient civilizations to accept uncertainty and relinquish control. Now he could only wait. 20 seconds. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Every species, every representative, every observer was watching Kazar and Serentel. 15 seconds. Marcus thought about the fleets gathering outside. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers and crew members, billions of civilians who would die in the opening salvos of the war. All of them waiting for a decision made in this chamber. 10 seconds. Kazar's crystalline body began to resonate at a frequency that made the entire chamber vibrate. It was the Velker way of signaling a major announcement. 9 seconds. Serentel's colors suddenly shifted to a pattern Marcus had never seen before. A brilliant white shot through with every color of the visible spectrum and many beyond it. 8 seconds. Asterisk. Both representatives spoke simultaneously, their voices overlapping in perfect synchronization despite the vast differences in their methods of communication. 7 seconds. The Velker Empire accepts the proposal, Kazo declared. 6 seconds. The Ashanti Collective accepts the proposal, Serentel announced. 5 seconds. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Around the chamber, representatives erupted into celebration. Some species cheered in their own ways. Others transmitted joy through chemical signals or electromagnetic pulses. The Mediator Prime's ancient form seemed to glow with satisfaction. 4 seconds, met the countdown. Continued. 3 seconds. Kazar saw Marcus's alarm and understood immediately. The fleets cannot be recalled in time. Both empires mobilized massive military forces. They are operating on automated protocols. Unless we transmit stand-down orders immediately. 2 seconds. Sarentel's telepathic presence exploded outward with incredible force. She was transmitting directly to every Ashanti mind in the fleet, conveying the decision instantly across light years. 1 second, Kazar's body flashed with brilliant light as he broadcast on every frequency the Vulcar military used. His authority as Supreme Commander, overriding all other commands. 0 seconds. Asterisk. The war clock reached 0, and for one eternal moment, Marcus didn't know if the orders had reached the fleets in time. Then, on the view screens showing the space around Harmony 7, the warships began powering down their weapons. The Velker fleet's aggressive formations shifted to neutral positions. The Ashanti ship's bioluminescent weapons dimmed to dormant states. The war was over before it began. Marcus collapsed into the nearest chair, exhausted beyond anything he'd ever experienced. The protective bubble around him dispersed as Kazar and Sarentel both moved to their respective areas of the chamber, already beginning the complex negotiations about how the preserve would actually function. The Mediator Prime floated over to Marcus, its ancient eyes showing something that might have been approval. Ambassador Rivera, in 10,000 years of galactic diplomacy, I have never witnessed anything quite like what you just accomplished. Marcus looked up at the ancient being. Did it work? Did we really stop the war? You did more than stop a war, the Mediator replied. You demonstrated something that many species had forgotten. You proved that intelligence is not just about following the optimal strategy. It is also about imagining strategies that did not exist before. Around the chamber, representatives were already drafting documents, establishing committees, and planning the structure of the Nexus Rift Galactic Preserve. Humans would indeed serve as the primary guardians, with research access granted to all species under carefully negotiated protocols. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting the relief wash over him. When he opened them again, he found Kazar standing in front of him. The massive crystalline warrior looked down at the small human. You gambled your life on the possibility that we could be more than our programming. You were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Probably both, Marcus admitted. Kazar's crystals arranged themselves into what Marcus had learned was the Velker equivalent of a smile. The Velker respect strength above all else. Today, you showed a kind of strength we did not know existed. You showed the strength to be vulnerable, to risk everything, to trust in change. Perhaps we have something to learn from your species after all. Sarentel joined them, her luminous form glowing with colors that indicated deep respect. The Ashanti Collective has analyzed your actions and your reasoning. We have concluded that human consciousness operates on principles we do not fully understand. You embrace contradiction. You function in uncertainty. You see possibilities where we see only fixed options. She paused, her color shifting to something warm and appreciative. You saved billions of lives today, Ambassador Rivera. Both our species and yours. The Collective will remember this. All Ashanti, now and for generations to come, will know the name Marcus Rivera and the day humanity taught the galaxy that wisdom sometimes looks like chaos. Marcus stood, accepting their words with a tired smile. I just hope we can live up to the responsibility. Managing the preserve won't be easy. No, Kazar agreed. It will be extremely difficult. You will face pressure from both our empires and from many others who want access to the Rift's power. You will make mistakes. You will face situations you are not prepared for. And that, Sarentel added, is precisely why you are the right choice. Because when you make mistakes, you will adapt. When you face the unknown, you will improvise. When situations become impossible, you will find ways to make them possible. That is the human gift. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the Nexus Rift Research Station. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining Velker structural strength, Ashanti biotechnology, and human flexibility. It orbited the rift at a safe distance, housing researchers from 17 different species. Through the viewport, the Nexus Rift swirled with colors that still defied explanation. Scientists had been studying it for weeks now, and every day they discovered something new that contradicted their previous theories. The rift remained a mystery, beautiful and dangerous, and full of infinite possibilities. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, Marcus's assistant, floated over in the zero-gravity environment. "Sir, we have another diplomatic crisis. The Velker research team wants to place sensor arrays closer to the rift. The Ashanti team says it's too dangerous. Both sides are threatening to file formal complaints." Marcus sighed. "Schedule a meeting for this afternoon. Tell both teams they need to present their arguments, and we'll figure out a compromise." "You always say we'll figure out a compromise," Sarah observed. "Do you actually know how we'll compromise, or are you making it up as you go?" Marcus grinned. "Making it up as I go along. That's what humans do best." As Sarah left to arrange the meeting, Marcus turned back to the viewport. He thought about that day in the Senate chamber, about standing unshielded and dying while 2 ancient empires decided whether to change, to follow their programming into oblivion. They had chosen to change. Barely, reluctantly, but they had chosen it, and in doing so, they had discovered what humanity had known all along, that the most powerful ability any intelligent species could have was the ability to become something different than what they were yesterday. The Nexus Rift pulsed with light, mysterious and beautiful, belonging to no one and open to all. A preserved mystery in a galaxy that had almost destroyed itself, trying to solve everything. Marcus smiled. Chaos, uncertainty, and the courage to change. These were humanity's gifts to the stars, and the galaxy, he thought, was just beginning to understand how valuable those gifts really were. Asterisk